Number 10. Newspaper insulation. When winter came and heating fuel was scarce or too expensive, families lined their walls with layers of old newspapers. They stuffed newspapers between mattress layers for warmth, and they wrapped their feet in newspaper inside their shoes. The cellulose in newsprint traps air, creating real insulating power. Some families papered entire interior walls, covering the print with floor-based wallpaper made from catalogs. Farmers stuffed newspaper into barn and chicken coop gaps. Kids went to school with newspaper padding in their coats. A stack of newspapers cost nothing. People shared them, collected them, reused them until they fell apart. Today, insulation is a multi-billion-dollar business. But during the worst winters of the 1930s, Americans kept their families alive with yesterday's headlines and a pot of flour paste. Number 9. The Alwayson soup pot. Your grandmother kept a pot on the stove that never really emptied. Monday's leftover veggies went in. Tuesday's chicken bones joined them. Wednesday's potato peels, carrot tops, and onion skins added flavor. By Thursday, the pot held a rich, complex broth that tasted like a French chef spent all day making it. It took your grandmother all week, and it cost nothing beyond what was already bought. The perpetual soup pot was common across Depression-era America. Mining towns, factory cities, farming communities all used this method. The constant simmer killed bacteria and kept the soup safe. Each day it changed a little. Each day it fed someone. This practice disappeared when refrigerators made it possible to store leftovers separately. But the soup pot was more efficient. It turned scraps into meals with zero waste and almost zero effort. Today, Americans throw away billions of dollars worth of food scraps that our grandmothers would have turned into dinner. Now here's where the government gets uneasy. During the Depression, millions of Americans bartered goods and services because cash had dried up. A farmer traded eggs for a haircut. A seamstress mended clothes in exchange for firewood. Mechanics fixed cars for bushels of corn. Whole communities ran on handshake economies where no money changed hands and no taxes were collected. The ears took notice. By the late 1930s, federal officials started cracking down on barter networks, arguing they represented unreported income. Towns that had built working local economies without currency were told they owed taxes on the fair market value of every trade. The message was clear: you can starve, but you can't stop paying. That barter knowledge, how to value skills, negotiate fair trades, build trust-based economies, was systematically discouraged. Today, most Americans can't imagine surviving without a paycheck. Our great-grandparents did it for a decade. Your grandmother never tossed the bottom of a celery stalk or the root end of a green onion. She put them in a dish of water on the windowsill and watched them regrow. Within a week, new shoots appeared: celery, green onions, lettuce, potato eyes, all regenerated into usable food with nothing but water and sunlight. This wasn't gardening, it was stretching groceries. A single bunch of green onions bought for a few cents in 1935 could regrow 3 or 4 times before it gave out. Kids watched the kitchen window like a science experiment. Mothers used those fresh greens to make thin soup look and taste like a real meal. The method works exactly the same today, but nobody teaches it because grocery stores need you to buy a new bunch every week. Number 6. Corncob jelly and syrup. After the corn was eaten, the cobs didn't go in the trash. Your grandmother boiled a dozen strip cobs in water for 30 minutes, strained the liquid, and added sugar and pectin. The result was a pale amber jelly that tasted surprisingly like honey. Some families skipped the pectin and just boiled the liquid down into a thin syrup for pancakes and biscuits. Corn cobs contain natural sugars that release during boiling. The flavor is subtle, sweet, and slightly earthy. A batch of jelly from a dozen cobs filled 4 or 5 small jars. The corn was already bought, so the jelly was free. This recipe circulated among farm communities from Iowa to Georgia. Extension agents mentioned it now and then. but it never made the official government recipe pamphlets. It was too simple, too cheap, too hard to build a product around. When high fructose corn syrup flooded the market in the 1970s, nobody needed to boil cobs anymore. But the families who did it will tell you the flavor beat anything that ever came out of a factory. Number 5. Depression cake. No eggs, no butter, no milk. When every luxury ingredient vanished from the pantry, American women invented a cake that needed none of them, also called crazy cake or wacky cake. It used flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, vinegar, vanilla, vegetable oil, and water. No eggs, no butter, no milk. You mixed everything directly in the baking pan. One bowl, one spoon, into the oven. Out came a chocolate cake that was tender, moist, and tasted far better than it had any right to. The whole thing cost pennies. Church ladies brought it to every potluck. Kids got it for birthdays when money was tight. No one complained. Some bakers swore it was better than the traditional recipe. Now for the science. The acid-base reaction between vinegar and baking soda produces carbon dioxide bubbles that aerate the batter, in many cases more evenly than beaten eggs. Food scientists confirmed this decades later. Our grandmothers figured it out by accident and necessity in 1932. Number 4. Bread pudding from stale bread. Throwing away bread was a moral sin in a Depression household. When a loaf went stale and bread at 6 cents a loaf was too expensive to waste, your grandmother tore it into pieces, soaked it in a mix of milk, eggs, sugar, and vanilla, and baked it into bread pudding. Sometimes she added raisins or a handful of nuts, sometimes just a sprinkle of cinnamon. The oven turned dry, hard bread into something custard soft and golden brown on top. Served warm, it was the kind of dessert that made children forget they were poor. The trick worked with any bread: white, cornbread, hard biscuits. Even stale cake scraps ended up in the pudding dish. Today, restaurants charge $14 for bread pudding and call it artisanal. Your great-grandmother called it not wasting. The recipe hasn't changed, just the price tag. Number 3. Lye soap from cooking grease and wood ash. This is the one that makes chemical companies nervous. Every Depression household saved cooking fat in a can and collected hardwood ash from the fireplace or stove. When enough had built up, your grandmother leached water through the wood ash to create lye, a powerful alkali. She then heated the saved grease, carefully mixed it with the lye water, stirred for hours, and poured the mixture into molds. After curing a few weeks, the result was hard, effective soap that cleaned everything: clothes, dishes, floors, skin, hair. That soap cost nothing to make. The chemical reaction, saponification, creates soap and glycerin naturally. You can't improve on that chemistry. It's the same reaction commercial soap makers use today, except they strip out the glycerin and sell it separately to cosmetics companies. Your grandmother's soap kept the glycerin in, which is why it left skin softer than anything at the drugstore. After the war, companies like Procter & Gamble ran huge campaigns promoting factory-made soap and detergent. Homemade soap was painted as unsanitary, old-fashioned, dangerous. The skill nearly died out completely. Today, artisan soap sells for $8 to $12 a bar at farmers markets. The exact same product your grandmother made for free. Number 2. Canning and preserving everything. In the fall of 1935, it wasn't unusual for a farm wife to can 500 jars in a single season. Tomatoes, green beans, peaches, pickles, jams, relishes, corn, sauerkraut, even meat, all went into ball or mason jars, sealed with boiling water or a pressure canner. That wall of jars in the root cellar was the family's insurance against winter hunger. A 10-cent seed packet in April became 40 jars of food by October. The jars cost 25 cents each and lasted decades. Rubber seals were a nickel a dozen. The investment was tiny compared to the security it provided. During the Depression, families that canned survived. Families that depended on stores often went hungry when prices spiked or shelves emptied. The USDA actually promoted canning during that period. But after the war, the message flipped. Frozen foods and factory canned goods were marketed as superior, convenient, safe. Home canning was suddenly portrayed as risky, a breeding ground for botulism and spoilage. The truth is that properly done home canning is as safe as any factory process and produces food that tastes dramatically better. But factories can't sell what you make in your own kitchen. The canning knowledge your grandmother carried in her head was worth more than a savings account, and it cost almost nothing to use. Number 1. Community self-reliance. The greatest hack of the Great Depression wasn't a recipe or a household trick. It was the way Americans organized to take care of each other when the government couldn't or wouldn't help fast enough. Neighbors shared tools, seeds, and labor. Churches ran soup kitchens funded by donations of a few cents per family. Women's clubs organized clothing exchanges where outgrown shoes and coats passed to the next family in line. Men formed work crews, building and repairing for each other when no paid jobs existed. Farmers let hungry families glean fields after harvest, gathering whatever produced the machines left behind. Barbers cut hair for eggs. Doctors accepted chickens and firewood as payment. Whole towns operated as single units of cooperation, not because they were idealists, but because the alternative was watching their neighbors starve. This kind of radical self-reliance terrified both government and big business. It proved that communities could survive outside the formal economy. It proved people didn't need to depend on institutions for every basic need. After the Depression, the push towards suburban isolation, car culture, and consumer dependency quietly dismantled those neighborhood networks. Today, most Americans don't know their neighbors' names. Our great-grandparents knew their neighbors' children's shoe sizes. Our great-grandparents knew each other's shoe sizes. Here's my challenge. Try just one of these this week. Just one. Save your bacon grease. Simmer a bone for stock. Regrow green onions on your windowsill. Make that depression cake and taste how good it is. Then come back and tell me our grandparents were just being old-fashioned. Tell me they didn't know things that we've been paying corporations to do for us ever since. I tested these. My kitchen has a grease jar now. I made water pie last Sunday, and my kids asked for seconds. I boiled corn cobs, and the jelly tasted better than the store-bought honey sitting right next to it. Share which one you're going to try in the comments. I want to see if the bacon fat jar gets more love than the depression cake. Because these weren't just survival tricks. They were wisdom that entire industries were built on making us forget. Your great-grandparents knew. Now you know, too. Like this video for more from Winds of Thought. And don't forget to subscribe.